Here is a Vietnamese team of snake catchers that finds a nest with hundreds of venomous snakes in a slope by the river. And here is another team that digs not only fish from underground, but also a crocodile. It turns out that underground chambers hide various secrets where even a large catfish can be caught, and videos documenting such events have millions of views. How is this possible? Where do these snakes, crocodiles, and fish come from? That's what today's episode is all about. Welcome. We can find incredible things on the internet, amateur recordings documenting extraordinary and rarely seen situations. So when we see a video that has gained tens of millions of views, we hope we've just found such a video. Here we see a Vietnamese group of snake catchers. The team is looking for snakes on a canal bank and has come across a hole in the ground, which may indicate a king cobra's hiding place. These people are from a distant culture, and we forgive their somewhat strange and exaggerated behavior. With a special detector, they check if there really is something in the hole. Confirmation adds to the mystery of the situation. Similar emotions are likely experienced by treasure hunters when they come across a chest hidden in the ground. Here we have a treasure of a different biological nature, but the fascination is similar. The tension is mounting. The sound we just heard sounds more like coming from a Godzilla than a snake's nest, and it's starting to get a bit funny. A necessary effect? Artificial ramp-up of emotions? Well, we have to forgive the creator's imagination once again. Digging begins in the slope, and it turns out there was indeed a snake on the ground. And not just one. An extraordinary find. A whole bunch of venomous snakes come out of the hole in the ground. Small, large, and even huge. The catchers pull them out one by one and pack them into bags. And we begin to wonder, how is this possible? There are no cuts in the original recording, the snakes are real, and we saw everything with our own eyes. Snakes do sometimes flock together in various holes, but in such numbers? And king cobras? Let's look at another similar recording. Here we are dealing with a different group, but also from Vietnam. This team specializes in fishing. The catchers also use an electronic detector, which, like in the previous recording, indicates a find in the slope. The situation is analogous. Digging and drilling in the ground begins. After several attempts, the catchers manage to break through to the underground chamber. They deepen and widen the hole until fish of various species start to flow out of it. The fish are alive and well, and we start to wonder what all this is about. Fish underground? Everything looks very realistic, and besides, it is an amateur recording, not a movie set, so such a mystification would probably be difficult. The fishermen are still digging in the hole. They have pulled out many fish from it, but that's not all. The real icing on the cake awaits us at the end. Something much bigger and more dangerous than a fish is sticking its snout out of this hole this time, a reptile. The fishermen widen the hole and again plan to pull out the animal. Finally, they manage to grab the crocodile by the tail and try to pull it out together. Again, we see a display of that specific Asian style of expression. However, we can now clearly see that this scene is staged. The crocodile is indeed quite big, but not so big that it would require 3 grown men to pull it out. It is an obvious act, and a weak one at that. The fishermen are trying to show that the animal is strong and is putting up a fight. So maybe we are being tricked all along, and all of this was staged just to evoke emotions in the viewer and, above all, to gain a large number of views. Is it even possible to arrange such a scene? Many viewers don't even ask themselves such questions and accept the whole event as true. Others only see certain shortcomings and don't know what to think about this, while others still consider it a blatant fraud. What is the truth? Of course, it's fake. Both videos depict stage situations, but it must be admitted that it's not immediately apparent, and sometimes you have to watch them to the end and do so quite carefully to prove it. The internet is full of amazing, sometimes painfully true things, but there are also many forgeries aimed at views. People resort to increasingly sophisticated methods. From the beginning, the use of metal detector raises our suspicions. Yes, detectors detect metals, but snakes? Fish? Secondly, we see too many analogies between both films, just as if one was modeled after the other. In both cases, a mysterious find is located in the slope, so it is possible to just dig up some type of chamber from the other side and hide animals in it. None of the fishermen look behind the slope or investigate it from above, which is suspicious in itself. When we visit both of these channels, we will also notice that their recordings are very similar and are all based on stage situations, which ultimately explains the matter. How all of this was done, what the details of this mystification are, we can only guess. It certainly took some effort and, above all, a lot of imagination. We can find many such recordings on the internet. Some are more realistic than others, but one thing is certain. They attract audiences as evidenced by millions of views. People are intrigued by such films, and judging by the comments, most of them are fooled. It must be admitted that sometimes it's not easy to see that we're dealing with a fake, especially for a layman unfamiliar with the subject matter. Sometimes it's the other way around. People mistake a real situation for a fake. So the proper assessment is not easy at all. Who among you would fall for such a recording? The scene again takes place in Asia, where a man walks through a marshy field in search of fish. Why does he need a snake? The film is titled Fishing with a Snake, and after a moment it becomes clear. The man finds a hole in the ground filled with water. He notices that there are fish in it and releases a snake inside. After a moment, the first live fish jumps out of the hole, followed by another, then another. The snake does an excellent job, and the viewer can guess that the reptile scares the fish somewhere in an underground cave, and they, fearing it, simply jump out. The film has millions of views again. Does anyone realize that this is a hoax? The hole in the ground is a tunnel. On the other side of the tunnel, which we cannot see, another person first takes out the snake, then he puts in the fish. After the fish, he must have put the snake back in, since we can see the snake coming out of the hole after completing its mission. Perhaps films of this type should be seen as illusion shows, a bit like conjuring a rabbit out of a hat. We all know it's a trick, yet we still watch the performance. Perhaps this is the magic of these types of films and the reason for their enormous viewership. Even people who know it's fake watch it, only wondering how it was done. The greater the realism and the attention to detail, the better the effect. Tricks with holes in the ground attract viewers' interest, so we can come across many variations of them. Here we have an extreme example of catching catfish. A raw chicken is supposed to serve as bait in its entirety. Although catfish sometimes eat water birds, there are usually chicks, such as ducklings. Anglers sometimes use chicken liver as bait, but a whole chicken is obviously an absurd bait. The fishing spot is also absurd. It is a hole in the ground again, this time on an island in the middle of a river. The first fish escapes from the angler's hands, but after the second bait is thrown in, there is a catch. We can see that the supposed fish is pulling to the side, so there must be a tunnel dug to this direction. This film has many cuts, so making it and arranging the whole situation was definitely easier than in the previous cases. It has much more to do with comedy than realism, but despite this, the film has tens of millions of views. Moreover, there are at least 3 films on the internet presenting exactly the same scene, differing only in detail, and each of them has tens of millions of views. There are a whole bunch of films based on a similar idea. The creativity of the creators knows no bounds here, and there is only one goal: attract the largest audience. But why do these particular films succeed in doing so while others that would seem more valuable do not? Why is there so much of this type of content on the web? Of course, the internet is not to blame here, but we ourselves, our nature. We like unusual, out-of-the-ordinary type of things, and we click and watch them. We want sensations. That generates demand, and demand generates supply. We want emotions. That is our human nature. News services are based on this. Accidents, disasters, events that freeze the blood in our veins, anything that evokes emotions, whether it's fear or joy, are shown the most. It's important that it works, that it attracts, regardless of whether it's useful. The task of commercial TV is to attract viewers, show what's most interesting. YouTube works in a similar way. The algorithms suggest what has interested other viewers, taking into account our preferences and interests. So, our YouTube homepage is a reflection of ourselves. Show me your YouTube homepage, and I'll tell you who you are, one might say. Here is another video of this kind. This time the fisherman is a little boy. Like in previous videos, there is also a motif of a hole. Everything looks very realistic. So realistic that for a moment one might think that perhaps it is all true. In any case, it doesn't look like a setup. Perhaps the situation is real and the fish just hid in the hole in the ground after the river dried up and are trying to wait out the drought there. Some species actually do that, including the depicted African catfish. But are we dealing with such a situation here? Did the boy find a hole in the ground to simply pull the fish out of? The ground and cracks looked natural. However, in one of the shots you can see the ground moving for a moment, indicating a hoax. Once again, everything has been staged. What do you think of these types of videos? Do they clutter up the internet or enrich it? Do people fall for them, or do they want to be fooled and treat them like a magic show in which they knowingly participate? Or maybe it's precisely about the uncertainty that we are experiencing that we don't know until the end whether what we are seeing is true. Let me know in the comments. That's all for today. Thanks. Bye.
Ui, kinh thế nhỉ.